Do we have any announcements? Well, I do. First of all, take a look at your insert, your announcement insert. There's things in there for you. We are looking for, we have our spring pub theology coming up. We have a sign-up sheet in the back. I know that people have already started signing up as well. And then we have choir. If anyone has not heard, the choir will be singing on Easter, and there are rehearsals leading up to that. And it's not on here. Oh no, it's at the top. LA Church Forums. There's this little thing up at the top. Starting on Sunday after church, we'll have the first one. We are talking about nature, and specifically, it's a little bit more. So we've been doing this, for those of you who haven't been here, we're doing a sermon series on learning from nature, or learning with nature, or something like that. Neither of those headings got into the order of service this week, so, But we're doing that. And so we'll go a little bit more in depth in the stuff we've been talking about. So we'll talk a little bit about environmentalism, a little bit about how faith traditions have looked at their relationship with nature, that sort of thing. Forums happen right after church on Sundays, so there'll be worship, then about 15 minutes for people to grab their coffee, and then we'll convene back here, anyone who wants to, and then anyone who doesn't want to can keep having coffee. It's a no-fault coffee situation. We will not judge. But if you want, you can come, and it should be, hopefully, fun and interesting. That'll be the 3rd, and then the 10th, there'll be a second installment. Okay, so, what's my order of service? Here it is. Sorry, just running them up today. So today we are talking about learning from nature, and specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about despair. About how often when we look at a lot of the big picture issues, things like global warming in particular, or that island of garbage that just sort of floats around in the ocean, that one too, will do this to you, where we just start to despair of ever actually being able to change things, right? Particularly with climate change, there's this sort of clock that keeps ticking down and makes us all go a little crazy sometimes. So, but that's what we talk about. We'll talk about the environment and despair, and of course when you talk about despair, you also talk about hope. So let's take a moment now in silence to think about the parts of our relationship with the natural world that cause you to despair and the ones that give you hope. please join in our first hymn in your gray hymnal. We'll be just using the gray hymnal today. Number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Please rise. In my internship church, we always pronounce that Fount of Every Blessing, which is actually what it's supposed to be, but I've given up. Just to be clear, for those of you who are like, no, it's Fount. You're right. Okay, please join in our covenant written in your order of service. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of all.
Difficult is not the same as impossible by Solnit. A lot of stories in circulation endeavor to strip you of hope and power, to tell you it doesn't matter, or it's too late, or there's nothing you can do, or we never win. To hope is to accept despair as an emotion but not as an analysis. To recognize that what is unlikely is possible, just as what is likely is not inevitable. To understand that difficult is not the same as impossible. To plan and accept that the unexpected often disrupts plans for the better and for the worse. To know that the powerful have their weaknesses, and we who are supposed to be weak have great power together, power to change the world, have done so before and will again. To know that the future will be what we make of it in the present. To know that joy can appear in the midst of crisis, and that a crisis is a crossroads. Perhaps hope is the courage to persevere when winning looks hard. Perhaps it's not hope but faith that sustains people when success looks almost inconceivable.
What to Do When the World is Ending by Yotam Marom. I am part of a generation that feels constantly, and even in the most mundane moments, that the world is ending. Almost every article I read these days begins with the same preamble listing all of the overlapping crises, topped off by the climate crisis, which will quite possibly lead to the extinction of our species. We have been told so many times that we have an extremely brief window to turn things around, and even then, it is already too late in many ways. I feel swallowed by despair, and I know I am not alone. But while there are some things about this moment that feel unique, I remind myself that the experience of the world ending is not new. Whether due to a prophecy or a very real looming threat, many of our ancestors also likely felt that the world was ending, and in many cases their worlds did end. So what do we do when the world is ending? The same things that so many of the giants on whose shoulders we stand did when their worlds were ending. We choose to face our despair, to walk toward it and through it, choose to take action, choose to build movements. We do it because we don't know how it ends, because there are possibilities out there that we simply can't see from here. We do it because every person organized and campaign won, and fraction of a degree of global warming prevented will save lives. Because movements that believe are far more powerful than movements that don't. And yes, we fight because fighting is one of the ways we get to nurture our courage and generosity and hope and all those other fundamentally human traits that we treasure most. Because our lives will be infinitely richer in that struggle than outside of it. We do it because it is how we truly get to live.
All glory be to God who stands.
Let us take a moment now to pray for those in need of our prayers, to push back the chaos of the secular world and enter the sacred space of creation. Now, as Jesus taught us, let us pray. Parent God, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Now it's time for the offering, a free gift to a free church. Many gifts, and together build one church community. Please be seated. Our next reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13. Jesus put before them another parable. The commonwealth of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in the field. It is the smallest of all the seeds. But when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. And then he told them another parable. The commonwealth of heaven is like yeast that someone took and mixed with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened.
This is the responsive reading number 608. This clay jug. Inside this clay jug, there are canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains.
All 7 oceans on one side,
The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels.
and the music from the streams that one touches, and the source of all water.
If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth.
Reverend, listen. The God of my love is inside.
Now please turn in your gray hymnal to hymn number 318. Solnit, in our reading today, noted that hope is to accept despair as an emotion, but not as an analysis. To hope is to accept despair as an emotion, but not as an analysis. To recognize, she goes on, that what is unlikely is possible, just as what is likely is not inevitable. I'll say that all again. There's a lot of words. Hope is to accept despair as an emotion, but not as an analysis. To recognize that what is unlikely is possible, just as what is likely is not inevitable. What is likely is not inevitable. Now, I was talking to an artist friend of mine this week, and I told them what the topic of today's service was: the environment and despair. And he told me that he sees his role in the environmental movement as one of witness. Witness. Painting and drawing scenes in nature, often in the same locations day after day. But each time the scene is different. Sometimes there's rain. At other times there's sun. It used to be snow. And over an extended period of time, a story appears that tells us of the place and the planet, the ecosystem, its joys, its stresses, and its sorrows. Now, Henry David Thoreau was a witness too. Back then, just as the Industrial Revolution was kicking off in Concord, he would note the date that certain plants bloomed around Walden Pond every year, along with the ice-out date. The ice-out date when the pond was no longer covered in ice. This practice of witnessing continues today, and the Park Service can tell us that the ice melts on Walden Pond at least 2 weeks earlier now than it did back then. And we have been witnesses. During hikes in the White Mountains this past spring and summer, many people in the hiking community have noticed the haze from the Canadian wildfires that have obscured the view. And of course, the weird weather of climate change. From hiking through the snow on Mount Hale in June to the constant and unremitting flood of Vermont and New Hampshire in the spring. All this tells us that something is wrong with the ecosystem. Now, you have similar experiences, I know, because we've talked about them. We have all seen the state of the world because we live in it. We are part of it. And that is what it means to be a witness. And that is what it means to witness. That is what it means to witness as well. I don't know about you, but there are days when I feel driven to despair. We have witnessed so much over the last decade in so many aspects of our lives that the state of the world can leave us with dark feelings about the future. Now, in part, this is a function of the time we live in. But partly, it's by design. Partly, it is by design. Solnit says that a lot of stories in circulation endeavor to strip us of hope and power, to tell us that it doesn't matter, or it is too late, or there is nothing we can do, or we can never win. This is an old tactic of the powers, of those secular forces that try to profit off of feelings of helplessness. They want us to despair over the state of the world. They want that hopelessness, because sad people and depressed societies are easier to control. They have no energy to advocate for themselves. They accept their weakness with fatality. But it doesn't have to be that way. We have the choice to see all that is going wrong, and instead of throwing up our hands in surrender, we can choose to be energized. We can choose action. We can choose to take our witness and move into the world. The reading from Solnit today came from a book she co-edited about the climate crisis. I have it right here. It's entitled, "Not Too Late Changing the climate story from despair to possibility. Changing the climate story from despair to possibility. In a way, it is written for and in honor of a new generation of activists, energized by the Green New Deal, who have sometimes been told, frequently been told, that the fight was lost before they were born. Now, I wouldn't say that it is a cheerful book, but I would say that it does help to beat back despair. Even for those of us who have been around for a while and may have become a bit jaded. While there are some things about this moment that feel unique, says Yotam Marom in our reading today, I remind myself that the experience of the world ending is not new. The experience of the world ending is not new. We know this to be true. It's new to us, but we know that it is true, that over the course of humanity, each time we seem to be losing, despair rears its head, and we are tempted to throw in the towel. Marom himself has quite a list in his essay. In it, he mentions the devastation on Easter Island, the fall of Carthage, the arrival of Columbus, the rise of chattel slavery, the Holocaust, the destruction of Hiroshima, the Cold War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. We could add more. More moments where it felt as though the world was ending. But over the course of that same human history, we, human beings, have fought back against the despair. Instead, some people realize that surrender is not the only option. Instead, we work against the odds to find ways to bridge the gap between the darkness of today and the bright future that is possible tomorrow. Frederick Douglass once observed that power concedes nothing without a demand. And we can still make those demands for as long as we have breath. We can still witness. We can choose to speak and act. And we should be encouraged that even though it may not feel like it and progress is slow, we should be encouraged that we are actually moving in the right direction. For the environment, at least. Finally. Now, as we've talked about in previous parts of this series, things have gotten pretty bad. They got really bad in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So bad, in fact, that it has taken an enormous amount of time to work our way back to where we are today. After all, we have had to do more than repair the damage to the planet. We have had to challenge a culture and an economic system that encourages exploitation and extraction, not just of the ecosystem, but of the people who live in it. Exploitation and extraction. Now there's a phrase attributed to Theodore Parker, Martin Luther King, and a handful of others that is designed for times like this. Some of you know. It says that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And it is helpful, I think, that this book has a few fairly extensive lists of the many victories along that arc. Each victory has a story of struggle and sacrifice. Movements need people. They need activists. They need witnesses and witnessing, and humanity over history has indeed stepped up. Or at least part of humanity. Enough people, enough human beings have stepped up. And this is where we, the church, and other gathered voluntary communities can help. Marom asks in his reading today, what do we do when the world is ending? What do we do when the world is ending? And he answers, the same things that so many of the giants on whose shoulders we stand did when their worlds were ending. We choose to face our despair, to walk toward it and through it, choose to take action, choose to build movements. Now, as I have mentioned in the past, we in the church always have the option to hope. We always have the option to hope. We always have the choice to plant a seed for the commonwealth of heaven. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus describes this sort of choice as a mustard seed. As we have observed before, he uses a lot of nature imagery because he and his followers live very close to nature. So he talks about this mustard seed that someone took and sowed in the field. It is the smallest of seeds, he says, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air can make a nest in its branches. Now, I mentioned on annual meeting Sunday, some of you were there, that congregations today need to think of themselves not as builders, but as farmers and gardeners. Not as builders, but as farmers and gardeners, tilling the earth and planting the seeds in the ruins of past forms and institutions. And this field of environmental justice is a place that could use some mustard seeds. As Solnit notes, perhaps it's not hope, but faith that sustains people when success looks almost inconceivable. Perhaps not hope, but faith that sustains people when success looks almost inconceivable. There are many fields that need planted. There are many ways that we can plant. And since hope and faith are both the business of the church, we should take a moment now to consider what we can do, how we can plant these seeds to grow and support not just our own work, but the work of others who are tempted to despair. Let's take a moment now in silent prayer. Blessed be. Now let's join in our final hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth, hymn number 21. Please rise. perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act. They will be blessed in their doing. Amen, and blessed be.